Welcome to Unfamiliar Territory, an anime podcast hosted by two white dudes who've been friends for over 15 years. We talk about the history and influence of anime, as well as review anime new and old, believe in the stars, and sail away for the future into unfamiliar territory.
My name is Grant.
And I'm Brantley. Heads up, spoilers on the way. Check the description, see if you're safe to listen. We finished watching Medalist. Now, if you don't know what Medalist is, it's an American procedural television drama. It's about like a quote-unquote psychic who worked with California Bureau of Investigation. He's like pretending to read people's minds, but it's actually not that. Oh, shit, sorry.
That's
Monk. No, that's the Mentalist.
That's Monk.
No. Monk is not.
Monk, oh, no, sorry.
Monk is not an
sorry, I'm thinking of Psych.
Acclaimed psychic. There's too many of these damn pseudo-cop shows with people faking psychic powers.
So, we did watch Medalist, which is not about cops at all. Instead, it's about figure skating and being good at it and being bad at it. Mm-hmm. It's great. Medalist came out in winter 2025, which is in the beginning of 2025.
Fitting for an ice skating show.
So this is actually a relatively recent one that we watched.
Yeah.
I read the manga when it was a while ago, and I was like, damn, this is really good. And then when they announced the anime, I was super duper stoked. And then they announced that it'd be Studio NG, and I was like, no, because they mess up a lot of things. But they didn't mess up this one. They absolutely crushed it. Studio NG made Medalist, and it was written by Surumai Kada. And basically all they've done is Medalist. And that's fine. They did a good job. It is a show about an 11-year-old girl who wants to figure skate, and that's too late to start figure skating. And so a himbo sees her and is like, damn, this girl's got natural talent. I want to coach her. And it's a beautiful, beautiful relationship between a mentor and a mentee just trying to better each other.
It's also a story about how it's never too late to get into something, especially if you love it.
Especially if you love it. So yeah, what were your thoughts about Medalist, like right off the bat, shooting from the hip? Someone says, "Hey, tell me about Medalist."
The strength of the show, and I think of the manga before it, is that it really knows how to sort of give you the big moment,
the aura, as people are calling it nowadays.
I'm not young enough for that anymore. I'm 30 years old, Grant.
I'm right behind you. I got a month.
Yep. Say your fucking prayers. But yeah, I feel like it's a show that has really strong peaks and knows to put everything it has into those peaks. For those who are sports lovers, it, I think is, what you'd expect from a lot of these successful sports shows, where there's a lot of time spent on sort of character building and skill practice, and then there's the big moment of will they do it, will they not? There's a good variety of successes and failures. But ultimately, I think if there's one draw to it, I would agree. It's the relationship between Tsukasa and Inori. They have the cinnamon roll feedback loop going on. But also the nuance there is that they're both highly anxious characters. They're people who are really roughing it in some ways, but they're sort of exploring their struggles with technically growing up, right? And sort of what it means to be good at something you love and what it means to love something you're not always the best at. They're figuring that out together. And so they really are like the core part of the show's appeal.
Oh, for sure. I think I think coming at this from a teacher angle, I really, really, really dig this show. The relationship between Tsukasa and Inori is just so pure. It's a
See, I told you. Cinnamon roll
it
stuff.
is. It's cinnamon roll stuff, but it's also pretty realistic, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously they're gonna ham up some of the drama, but there's something about the I believe this child can do anything and I will support them for whatever they're gonna do. I love that Inori gives the same thing back to Tsukasa. I think that is a great relationship. So let's go episode by episode, talk about them, talk about the hype moments, talk about how they are, and we'll get into this and somehow make it about communism. So episode 1 is the intro to how it is. We have Inori sneaking into a ice skating rink. She looks extremely guilty right off the bat. She definitely is terrible at lying about this. And during this time, Tsukasa, who is a former ice dancer, now it's important to know that ice dancing is not pair skating, and it is figure skating, but it's a discipline of figure skating where it is like ballroom dancing. So it's not there's not as many flips and spins in ice dancing. There's not as many like dangerous stunts. At least not in the way that they are for figure skating. There's definitely some weird, dangerous stunts they do, but you're not trying to get like 3 spins in a row. It's kind of like lifting and spinning maybe once with 2 people, but it's not as physically demanding, and it's more based off that relationship you have. There's a lot of more difficulties in it in some aspects and not in other aspects, which is important for later in this review, I promise. I'm not just going off on tangents here. So Tsukasa is a 26-year-old man. He is he's a local. He was an ice dancer, and now he's trying to find something to give him money because he's poor. Everyone who's 26 has felt that, at least recently. And he does this because his former ice dancer partner, Hitomi, is like, hey, big guy, you should come here and work. And so he catches Inori trying to sneak in without paying the entrance fee, and he chases her out of the rink. Now, Inori isn't trying to sneak in, like, just by sneaking in. She gets some worms and gives them to the guy at the front. And he's like, yeah, I'll let you in if you give me worms. Because he's just doing it to make her feel good. And she loves earthworms. And so Tsukasa sees that Inori is really confident in her movements. She is willing to take risks. She has really good balance. And she is small for her age. And so Tsukasa's like, let's get this girl on the ice, and I will coach her. And Inori's mom, Nozomi, is like, hey, my oldest daughter was a figure skater, and she's in college right now, and it fucking sucked. And it made her feel bad, and I don't want Inori to do that.
She got a major injury that put her out of it, too.
Yeah, she got injured, and Inori is like, please, mother, I yearn for the ice. And once they get that going, once Tsukasa is like, hey, your kid is super talented, we gotta nurture this. She's super on board. Beautiful moment, beautiful episode, a really strong start.
All this is the foreground, by the way, to her background at, say, school, where she's not performing well. She's really struggling is zoning out because she doesn't relate to her classmates and doesn't keep up well with the schoolwork, can't concentrate, etc. And so getting this chance, and having someone care for her directly as a teacher, it's something that she wasn't getting sort of in her public school context. And so I think that sort of strengthens a lot of what's being said here. It's not just sort of the typical, like, oh, here's this goofball who really loves sports and they're going to go all in. It's there are stakes here. The reason why Inori's mom, doesn't want her to spend time on skating is because, like, she knows, yes, it might lead to an injury that ultimately wipes out her opportunities anyways, but in the meantime, she's not succeeding in school either. And so, she's like, seeing like this very risky path ahead for her child, that it puts her into sort of a reluctant, almost like conservative state, to the point where she wants to bring Inori to Tsukasa so that Tsukasa will, essentially shut her down and say, sorry, it's too late for you. Then the opposite happens, and Tsukasa takes her under his wing. Tsukasa's Tsubasa, if you could say that, because Tsubasa is wing in Japanese. Never mind, it's okay.
I thought Tsubasa was a sword. That's all she will ever be. That's a deep cut for Symphogear fans out there. All 6 of you.
Go watch our Symphogear episodes. Watch me toil. Listen to me just writhe in pain.
After we get this, I love this moment. I think the feeling of like someone finally believing in you is really shown super well. Mm-hmm. The animation and like the facial expressions for this show are really good. They do a really good job at making sure, like, oh yeah, this is sad. This is going to look good. There's a lot of micro movements you see on the characters, and I dig it. I think it's really good.
When a character is having this sort of intense emotional moment because their entire face gets flushed.
Yeah,
they love to do that, and it works.
They love to do that. It works.
It's a good like visual indicator for that emotion.
Oh yeah. And so in the next episode, we learn about the different badges. So to get a badge in ice skating, you have to go to different towns where there is what they call a gym leader. And you have to challenge them to an ice skating duel. And if you beat them, you get a badge. And once you get 8 badges, you can go to the Elite Four and challenge the ice skating champion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Who everyone knows
is Blue from Pokemon.
Show some respect.
But it's not that. Badge tests work as sort of like a level that you reach. There's different points that they're rewarded by the judges, and there's different things that different spins are worth different points. Different ways of landing are worth different points. You get points for doing things perfectly, and you lose points for attempting them and failing them. So the idea is that to get a badge, you need to be able to do these moves because these moves are going to give you more points than these moves. But if you attempt something and fail it, it takes moves off. So to start, you have to take the prelims. So you meet who we're going to see are kind of the rivals to Inori in this time. You meet Hikaru Kamisaki, who is an award-winning novice skater. So she is Inori's age, and she is the best and in her age group. And you meet Ryo, who is sort of a little bit of an asshole. He is a jerk-ass child, and everyone should shame him for it. You should never give kids any leeway when they are being emotionally rude. You just gotta put them in their place.
Jesus.
I'm just kidding. That's but
unless it's Blue from Pokemon, in which case, fuck
then
that kid
kick his ass. But no, Ryo is rude to Inori, and Hikaru is like absolutely like just shuts that shit down. She's like, hey, you need to be nice, you stupid motherfucker. And you get to see probably one of the most not intense, but one of the first moments of this show where you're like, oh shit, this is gonna be wild. And they have it in the opening, and it's when Inori and Hikaru are skating for the first time together, and Inori realizes that Hikaru is the novice champion. And while they're skating, Hikaru looks at her, spins, and then does a triple spin. And there's just something about it. It's so on the nose where it's like, hey, watch me leave you in the dust and look at you. And it's like, literally, she's like reaching out to her at this point. Like, that is the goal she wants. It's very, very blatant, but damn, does it hit. It hits so much. Even when you watch the opening movie for it, you feel it every time, or at least I do.
I'll agree, except I'll say that it's not so much leaving her in the dust as it is like an invitation. That's better. I mean, I think that's what makes that scene really good, because it does look like, it's like Inori's watching this happen and she's not there yet. But Hikaru is not your classic sports rival. She loves that Inori is here. She like is super nice to her. She's super encouraging, and it's such a fun relationship that they have, because it's like, it's a friendly rivalry. It's a friendly rivalry that Hikaru doesn't even see as a rivalry yet. And so as the show goes on, you get to see not just the perspective of Inori change, but also Hikaru. But that moment right there is one of the most deeply emotional moments of that first 3 episodes. And to me, that's the moment. If you feel good about it, you're like, hell yeah, I'm ready for this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll say that there are at least a couple of other characters I can think of that have this same sort of energy. There's Peko in Ping Pong the animation, and there's Eiji in Bakuman, where there's someone who's like, I love, sort of pushing myself to the absolute limit, and I want you to as well, because then I get to do what I want to do at my maximum and not be alone with it, right? Like, I want someone to be up here with me. But regardless, those, other examples aside, I love the implementation of that with Hikaru. She's great. I will 100% agree with you where, like, she is one of those check boxes for enjoying the show. Or like, if you watch that moment and you're like, it clicked, like I get it, and I'm in, then you're probably gonna stay in for the rest of it too.
Yeah. This is also where Inori tells Tsukasa, like, hey, I know my mom only said I can skate until middle school. I don't want to just skate till middle school. I want to be an Olympic gold medalist. And to Tsukasa, he's like, let's go. Let's do this. And you also... I really want to put up another fact about this episode. The reason that Hikaru decides to skate with Inori during this is because Hikaru hears parents talking shit about Inori, about her being too old and her not being ready enough. And I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that Hikaru is like, hey, fuck you guys. She's here to skate.
Yeah.
Let's go skate together.
I think that's what she has different compared to other characters of her archetype. Normally this archetype is like someone who's completely aloof and, unaware that anyone would do this activity and not just have a freaking blast with it. Hikaru though is keenly aware of sort of what's going on, and although she doesn't always let on that she's observing these things, it's absolutely a part of it. And from little glimpses I've seen further into the manga, I think they pay that off really well.
Yeah. So in the next episode, we get Tsukasa trying to make it so that Inori's mom is like on board, and Tsukasa's like, "Hey, Inori, we are going to do a competition and we're going to win it." And they do what they call the Maiko Cup, and she's going to go in as a prelim skater because she did get her badge. And Tsukasa's like, "Here, I'm going to show you how I skate." And the way that Tsukasa skates is so different from what you've seen so far, because you've seen these people doing these jumps and spins, and Tsukasa skates very, very safe, but he accentuates his movements in a way that is beautiful. And he's making sure that, like, he's like, "Look, watch me skate, Inori. Everything I do looks so natural to me." And Inori's like, "Okay, I think I get it." And they also meet Ryoka Mikita, or Mike, and their coach Mario Nachi. And Mike is a third grader. She's younger than Inori, and she's like the same exact height as her. And she is all cat. She literally looks like a cat. She acts like a cat.
Intentionally wears her hair up like a cat, like little cat ears.
Yeah. And she mentions it. She's like, "These are my cat ears." She's fun. And her relationship with her coach is completely different than Tsukasa and Inori's relationship, but at the same time, it's the same, which I really like. I like that this show is like, hey, there are multiple ways to be a good coach. Mm-hmm. And because Nachi and Mike argue constantly, they make fun of each other, but when Mike does something good, Nachi's like, "Hell yeah, let's go. We're so back. We're so good. We're going to do amazing." It's all this support, but not in the way that Tsukasa and Inori's is. And I love that they don't paint it as a negative thing. They never say, like, "Oh, look how bad of a coach she is," or "Look how terrible they are together." It is, wow, they sure have an interesting relationship, and yet it still works. And there's still a lot of positivity in it. And I love that. Mm-hmm. And so we get the two, Tsukasa and Inori, planning for how they're going to win the competition. And the idea is we can do it two ways. They call it the takoyaki and the cake method. Or the taiyaki, sorry. And the taiyaki method is a very safe, if we master the basics and don't fuck up, you have a pretty good chance at winning. But you have to be complete, you have to be the best at the basics. And then the other one is the cake method, which is, hey, you know what the best part on the cake is? It's the strawberry, which is not true, but that is what everyone in anime ever says. And that's just a lie. Strawberries are good, but come on.
It's Japanese culture.
Yeah.
And listen, here's the thing. We probably haven't had the right kind and good enough strawberries on cake to be able to experience that.
That's probably true,
right? Like, you get like a rinky-dink, supermarket strawberry up on top of there. Like, yeah, of course it's not going to be worth it. But I've had some damn good strawberries in my day, so I can totally get that.
So he says, "Hey, so here's what we're gonna do. You need to make sure that you can do the Salcho jump, which is named after Ulrich Salcho in 1909.
I think it's Salco.
Salco, that's it. Damn,
at least that's English. How they pronounce it in the anime. I don't know if...
I'm pretty sure that's it, because his name is Ulrich Salco, and he's Danish-born. He's from Denmark, so that makes sense. And Inori cannot do the Salco. She just can't. She can't do the double Salco, And instead of doing that, they're like, hey, why don't you try and do a flying sit spin, which is the one where they kick off and they land and they have their leg out, because Tsukasa watches a dog chase its tail, and he's like, you know what, your problem is this, but this one is technically more advanced, but it doesn't have the thing that you're fucking up on. And that makes it so that she does it, and she is like, this is it. We're going to do the taiyaki method, but we're going to have a cake. We're going to have the strawberry, and it's going to be my sit spin. I love this episode. I think one of the things I love about this one in particular, besides seeing the coach interactions with other kids, is that at no point does Tsukasa try and influence Inori's decision. And he even says that. She's like, what would you do? And he goes, I know what I would do, but I'm not going to tell you because this is your decision. And the idea is like, you need to be able to pick something and live with it if it fails or succeeds, but everything that is about this is going to be up to you. And I love that way of coaching. I love the agency that Tsukasa gives to Inori, and I love that he wants to guide her with whatever she thinks is the best way to do it. Not that he won't give his input on how to do it better, but he doesn't want to push her into something that she isn't going to want to do. And I think that is such a great relationship they have for this coach, and it's so good. It's so, and he doesn't treat it in a way to Inori where it's condescending either.
Yeah.
He's totally serious about it. And I love that they really make an effort to show that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's amplified in how Inori is grappling with her anxiety too. Where she'll use his Tsukasa's like jacket hood strings and like tug on them as sort of a grounding technique. It started as like, he offered sort of his, I don't remember if it was his thumbs or his forefingers maybe, but to like grab onto them and sort of
those thumbs, yeah.
But then, she's then kind of adapts it into her own thing where she grabs his little, hoodie strings on her own volition. And then eventually, she'll tie it into a bow. It's not as if like that coaching relationship is all about Tsukasa being the genius who will help Inori rise to the top. Instead, it's about Tsukasa being there to support her and mutually sort of guide her and validate what she's already kind of developing. It's that agentic model that you've mentioned. And don't worry, we will. I do have even more notes on the educational aspects of this that we can hit later. But we'll keep going for now.
So we get to the Miko Cup, the prelim free skating. And so Inori's older sister, the figure skater, Mika, returns from Canada where she goes to college, and Mika is like, hey, mom is super excited to see this. And Inori's like, I don't think so. And we'll get into the sister relationship because it's also really good. During the warm-up part, Inori gets really, really nervous because her mom's there to watch. And so she starts doing really bad during warm-ups. And so the mom comes to Tsukasa and is like, hey, I think that you need to lower the difficulty of this program. I don't want you to make my daughter do something that's going to be hard because I don't want her to feel bad about losing, which is sad. But immediately Inori overhears this and is like super duper sad, but is like, you know what? I couldn't have done this a month ago, but now I can. And she kind of does some like self-positive talk, which I really dig. Because for the first 3 episodes, it's a lot of Tsukasa encouraging Inori. But during this one, you see Inori encourage Inori, which is a great way to show this self-growth. And then, of course, Tsukasa's like, no, fuck that. I believe that Inori can do it. I think she's just nervous. And the competition starts. And Inori falls and then does the rest of the program completely flawless, and she ends with a flying sit spin. But then she moves into a different technique called the broken leg sit spin, which is the one where the leg is extended. And everyone's like, oh, shit. And at that point, you get a really, really emotional beat where Inori's mom is like, I'm going to do this. She's going to do this. I'm so ready for this. Like completely behind her daughter now. And I love that moment. Mm-hmm. That is a great moment.
That's what I'm saying. This is a show of moments. It really is.
Oh, it is. And it was really funny because on the way home from work when I'm thinking about this, I'm like, oh, what am I going to talk about? I love this show. It's definitely one of my favorites, but I don't know what there is. And now as I'm going through it, I'm like, oh, but this part happens. And so it's good to go back and like revisit it, even in like the mental palace. So we get the second part of the prelim skating, and Inori is in first place at the end of it. We see Mike perform, and she fucks up, and she just gets really, really depressed. And it's really sad because she was like supposed to be the first place winner, and she just completely fails miserably. But it's so funny because as she's finishing it, she just looks so depressed, and she does the rest of her performance flawlessly except she misses a combo. And during the entire time her coach is like, oh god, she looks so terrible, and she has this horrible look on her face as she's gracefully dancing around in the ice rink. It's so funny.
It's amplified by the fact that she's doing all these like cutesy, like I'm a kitty cat, yeah, kind of things. She's like putting her hands up like they're paws and things, but she just looks absolutely devastated.
It's so funny. I love that.
It's a really good balance of like comedy and tragedy right there. It's funny, but it hurts. I relate to that a lot as a kid who would catastrophize. If something would start going wrong, then it would get worse and worse for me. So I feel that kind of crash. I relate to it. Yeah. Here's a little fun aside. In my undergrad days, I was experimenting around with fighting game club, and I went over and I used to play plenty of Super Smash Bros. Melee back in the day, and it was kind of a biggest fish in your little pond kind of situation where I knew how to spot dodge, and I played top tier characters, and so I was one of the people who was consistently winning, and then of course I realized, like, okay, yeah, there's people who are way better than I am out there. So I go into this hesitant. I know I'm, like, going to get my shit rocked because I'm watching other people play it. And they're like, hey, do you want to play? And I'm like, I don't know. And so they have me sit down and try it. I managed to get one stock off the other person, and then, got steamrolled after that. I just kind of figured, oh, yeah, I got downloaded. But afterwards, one of the other club members who was watching was like, you were doing really well up until you lost your first stock. And I was like, oh, shit. That's what it is. So someone else watching was able to diagnose that, like, as soon as I started losing, I basically started, like, mentally throwing it. Because it's like, I was like, oh, well, I'm here at this club event. I don't want to try hard. I've been a sore loser in the past, and so I really don't want to like get worked up in front of new people that I'm trying to socialize with. I'm supposed to be here to have fun, not to win. And so I basically I completely sort of let go of the wheel after I lost my first life on that. So. Yeah, I think that makes like Mike's situation kind of resonate with me strongly, because I was that kid. Still kind of am that person.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing I like about this show, is that there's so many times where you see this and you're like, oh yeah, I get that feeling. And the best part about it is afterwards, Mike goes to her coach and's like, well, I guess I gotta be more like Inori if I want to be as good as Inori. And she's like, hey, I'm sorry for my aggressive behavior. I'm sorry that I'm mean to you. And her coach is like, absolutely the fuck not. You need to be mean and aggressive because that's what makes you an interesting skater to watch. And I love you for it. And then they argue a little bit more. And I think that's really cute. Yeah. And Mike is like, hey, Inori, we can be friends. Because they had a little bit of a falling out, but it really wasn't worth anything. You also get to meet Rio comes by, and his father is there, who is silver medalist Shinchiro Sanidori. And we watch Hikaru perform, and she earns a score of 97.23. To put in perspective, Inori scored a 12.64. And so it's like, this is the gap between you and her. You now have numbers to it. And so Inori goes to try and talk to Hikaru because she's like, oh, I want to congratulate her. And you get to meet the worst person of the entire series, Jun Yodaka, who is Hikaru's coach, and he's a gold medalist, and he is a fucking jackass. And Jun is like, dude, you can't get this kid to be a medalist, and Tsukasa kills him there with a knife. No, he says that of course she can. She's gonna do it. One of the running gags of this show, by the way, is that whenever it happens like twice. I forgot to mention in the first part, but Tsukasa accidentally gets knocked unconscious by like hitting his head on something.
When he's chasing down Inori in the first episode after he catches her for trying to sneak in. And
Inori pours one out for him by pouring tea on his face. And then she does it again. And it's so funny.
I forget, how does he get knocked out in the June situation?
Because he comes down the stairs or something and trips. I can't remember. But it's just really funny because he'll wake up and Inori's just over him, like crying and like, I can't believe you're dead, and just waterboarding him essentially. So now that the cup is done, Inori is like, hey, I think I need to do the level 1 badge test. And Tsukasa's like, of course. But here's the thing. It's going to be way, way harder. And we learn about Tsukasa's backstory and how he grew up on a distant planet where ice skating was banned. No, he watched Jun Yodaka, who's Hikaru's coach, and was inspired by him. And I think that is one of the most interesting dynamics we get. Basically, he's inspired by this guy to start skating, and that guy fucking sucks. It's like a never meet your hero type situation, and he is now still inspired by Jun, but in a different way, because instead of it being like, I can't wait to be you, it's like, I can't wait to beat you. Mm-hmm. And so Tsukasa wants to join skating, but at this point he's in high school. And he helps a woman named Maiko Kago and gets a part-time job at the husband's company. And they treat him as a member of his family. We don't really know too much about Tsukasa's like home life, but it's sort of implied that he lived by himself when he was in high school and doesn't have much of a family. And so now that he has this job, he's able to start practicing ice skating, and he starts training with Hitomi, the gal that got him the current job he has, and they make it to the all Japan's competition for ice dancing, and him and Hitomi get 4th place, so they never become medalists, which is sad. And so we actually find out that the woman that he befriended, Maiko, dies of an illness, and back where we're in, it comes to the present, and Tsukasa runs into the husband again, Koichi, and Koichi's like, hey, dude, you just left. And he's like, yeah, I didn't feel like, once she was gone, she's the one that was getting me this. And then Koichi's like, you're a fucking idiot. You should come back. Like, I don't want to come back. He's like, you can watch my daughter, and we can consider it even for you to live with me. And it's good. It's a really good relationship. I love the dynamic. And it also kind of gives you a glimpse of why Tsukasa's good with kids. Because he's known their daughter for a while, and it's just something that he is both naturally good at and has some experience with. And so we get a nice little glimpse into Tsukasa, and Inori's like, man, that is awesome. I'm super inspired. We're gonna win this now. And then during that time, they do the celebratory. The properly celebrate her winning the Maiko Cup, where they are outside and they just start yelling, and I love that part. It's really good. What do you think of Tsukasa's backstory?
I really like it. The fact that he gets one at all is important to me. But also that, like, we're exploring him sort of being this kind of transient person, right? Like that. He spent a bunch of his life basically couch surfing. That he doesn't have a home in ice dancing and skating like all these other people do that he's interacting with, right? He doesn't shirk responsibility, but he's he has low self-esteem. He doesn't feel like he's like worthy of these opportunities that people are giving him. And I like that they build out this world as one that is, kind and conscientious in that way. That, how all this sort of even springs up is, meeting a stranger whose phone is dead and, helping him out. That's, it's an optimistic view of the world, right? And as someone who spends a lot of my current career, doing my best to help with people who are, unhoused and homeless and oftentimes don't have stable resources to work with, that stuff hits with me, So yeah, I it's an interesting characterization of a coach for sure. And it's one that I think they do well. It's not just that Tsukasa is like, I want to be the best and it's hard and I failed before. It's that is sort of the roots of this also are in the way he sort of goes about life itself. And so watching him kind of in his alone time ends up being really interesting. What is he thinking about when he's going on a run? Like, what does he do in his free time and stuff like that? It's the way that you get absorbed into his own head. The way he's absorbed in his own head is really great. And I know those who are genre savvy and care about demographic sort of markers and stuff will be like, well, yeah, it's a seinen show, of course it's gonna do stuff like that. This isn't a shonen sports anime. But I don't think that the audience marker on that necessarily necessitates depth or nuance in this way. Surely we've seen it done much more flatly. And I don't think this is the kind of show that, excludes itself from, say, younger kids watching this and getting, adults have their own, deep life experiences that I'm entirely not aware of, right? Like, where does my coach go when our session is over? I think that's, really cool that they include that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I like that this isn't just a sports story about an athlete, but it is just as much a sports story about a coach.
Yeah.
And it wants you to know that pretty early on. and like even to the point where the opening isn't just Inori doing skating things, but also Tsukasa cheering her on and seeing Tsukasa get inspired. And it's nice to have a show where the coaching and the coach and the athlete are both the star.
Yeah, I think it benefits the writing too. Like I genuinely think that it's easier to understand Inori when you understand Tsukasa and vice versa. Like it's better than just putting all their eggs in one basket on one character, you know? Like I think that can work to an extent, but only to an extent.
Yeah, well, and it's also one of those things where if you are going to show this anime to someone, right? You can show this to a kid in elementary school. And you can show this to a 50-year-old man who was a coach for a high school team. Mm-hmm. And both of them are going to get something really good out of it. And at no point does it try and like dumb it down for the kids or try and bring it up. It is just a great story that is legitimately perfect for all ages.
Yeah.
And it works because it isn't just focusing on an athlete or a child becoming better, but it also is the reflection of an adult and how adults, even if they're not in their prime of like the sport, are hugely influential. I love it.
I was going to make a joke of like, you could also show it to two white dudes who have been friends for over 15 years, haha, because that's what's in our intro. Then I realized that we've probably done this long enough that we have to update that number.
It's 20, God. Because it is over 20 years now. We have been friends for over 20 years.
I don't want to re-record the intros.
I think we need to re-record the intros. I just do.
Sometime. Not today.
Not now. So yeah, that's a good good episode. And that is the halfway mark. So we get the level 1 badge, and we need a double jump to get your level 1. Tsukasa's like, hey, you don't need to rush. Even on test day, if you fail, you can do it again. And we meet a couple new skaters. We meet Suzu Komodo, who is another girl that is Inori's age. But she is, I believe, she's in a high, she's not in the first batch. She's a little, she's in level 7, which I believe is where Hikaru is. And you meet Emma Yamoto, and Emma Yamoto is also Hikari's age. Well, actually, she's younger than Hikari, and she is trying to get her level 1 badge, and you find out that she's really tall for her age, which is not a good thing in figure skating, and she had a lot of growth spurts, and that fucked up her training, and so she's behind. And once again, we get another coach during this time. We get
Yudai.
Yeah, and he is awesome because he's laid back. He's a good guy. He's also he also just scoops up the kids, and he's just like, we gotta go. And I'm like, yeah, great way to deal with that. He once again, it's not like Tsukasa where he's not doting, he's not like really on the ball with everything. He's kind of like a, hey, let's talk about your attitude with it. He's more of like that mind, the let's visualize it, let's take it slow, let's go at this. And he's good at it. And once again, it's another, hey, here's a coach that's completely different than Tsukasa.
Yeah.
But he's still a good coach.
Mm-hmm. Here's a coach who will turn a chair around and sit in it backwards to talk to you about things.
Apparently, I have this thing up, and apparently the reason he dresses like that is because he dresses as close to an elementary school teacher so that his kids feel comfortable around him.
That's interesting.
But yeah, that's a good way to look at it. He is very casual, and that's really good for these kids. So yeah, let's also on the wiki they have like Pokemon, like the hexagonal like character descriptions. And there's different ones for coaches and skaters, which is really funny.
You mean like a stat chart?
Yeah.
What is up with Pokemon weaving its way into this particular?
I don't know, because figure skating and Pokemon have a lot in common.
Yeah, there's ice.
There's
monsters.
So Emma and Inori get their level 1 badges. Tsukasa is like, hey, Yuda, do you want to help me out? And he's like, hell yeah, brother, let's go. And a bromance starts immediately. And we get to see Inori master the double loop jump. The loop jump is the outside foot and hitting it with your and it's an edge jump. I don't know what that means. I'm just looking up the terminologies. And so we get to see they go to West Japan Championship, and during this time we find out that Inori left her skates on the train. And so Tsukasa runs to get them. Like, literally, he's like, it's gonna be faster for me to run if I run. And he does it. And so we get a couple new characters. We get Kana Kitora and Ritsuki Koguma, but they're in this episode and that's it. So we don't need to get to talk too much about them. Mm-hmm. But one of the things about this episode that with Inori is that it is, Inori's like, I'm not the only person that has this dream, and I am not the only person that deserves this. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a great fucking message.
Yeah. With her and with Emma, it's her world is getting larger. It's
yes.
The classic sort of conundrum of realizing, like, if I win, someone else loses. The discomfort that comes with a zero-sum game, and sort of, perhaps the realization of what all these parents are concerned about. Of like when they talk big about your future, and then you're facing it and you're seeing, oh, like, when I'm winning, other people are losing, and some of us are not going to make it. Maybe all of us won't, because someone else we haven't even met yet is going to leave us out. Yeah, it's scary and it's real. But all the more reason it's important to sort of include here,
Mm-hmm. And so we get the second part of this episode of this tournament where Inori does her program, and she's suffering from muscle fatigue, and she starts to emulate Tsukasa's movements that he does in his ice dancing, and that part gets me every fucking time. Mm-hmm. Just like the absolute admiration she has for Tsukasa, to not just focus on what he's telling her, but to focus on how he skates and what she can do to emulate that, even if it's not something necessarily he's asking her to do. So she talks about how you can move your hands to make you look this much graceful, and Tsukasa notices it. And I believe that ending of that dance is the one with Inori that they use for the poster of the anime, and it's fucking good. Mm-hmm. But then Emma comes in, and Emma beats Inori.
Nope.
And that is really good for the show. Mm-hmm. During this time, Inori gets shin splints, which means she has to take a break, because if you work with shin splints, you can accidentally get a stress fracture, and so she's got to take a break, and they give Inori for her second place a big earthworm plushie, and it's great. Do you have anything to say about this episode?
Grant, would you still do a podcast with me if I was a worm?
Yeah, I would. I actually think we would probably...
We might get along better. We already do.
Yeah, no. If you were a worm, I think this podcast would get more... it would get more views.
It'd have shorter episodes for sure.
I don't know. I think if you were a worm, you'd figure a way to talk longer. And you would constantly be like, and as a worm.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to listen to you talk about it as a worm. So after this episode, we get a...
Not the worst thing that could happen, but,
Fuck.
Sorry.
So we get a year time skip. Which is wild because it does come out of nowhere. And essentially it's like, we do not need to watch Inori go through every single, and they could have, right? They could have really milked this and done it's the level 2 badge test, it's the level 3 badge test. But you can tell that this manga has a finish, right? This anime has a finish. They know where they want to get to it. So we don't need to do that. So we watch Inori get her first badge. A year passes, and now she has her 5th badge. And if she gets the 6th badge test, she can qualify for the All Japan's Novice A division and compete against Hikaru 1 year after she met her. And we get a little wrench in the plan because Tsukasa is called by Shinichiro, the Ryu's father, the jerk ass boy from episode 2. And he's like, "Hey, my son has stagnated, and honestly, I've seen what you did with this girl and how much she's grown. Can you help my son?" And he's like, "Sure." So Ryu joins their little crew, and he is a shithead. He's like, "Why am I with this nobody-ass ice dancer who doesn't know shit?" And Inori's like, "Hey, you leave my coach alone." And he's like, "Hey, what are you going to do about it?" And she's like, "Hey, I'm going to get badge 6 before you, bitch boy." And Tsukasa's like, "Hey, Inori, we got to get a double axle jump." And Inori's like, "Hey, watch this." And then she does it on land. And she's like, "I can do it on land. I just can't do it on the ice." And Tsukasa's like, "Holy shit. If you're physically able of doing this, you're great. We got to get you moving fast." This is a good episode, not necessarily. It doesn't have its moment. It doesn't have a moment, right? It's not like, whoa, look at this cool part. But it does start to create that tension that makes the last fourth of this show a little bit more interesting.
I think the on land jump is that's one of the moments that sticks with me. So I'll say that at least was a very memorable thing on my end, particularly because it's something Inori sort of surprises Tsukasa with. It's more of what you're describing before, where she's not just waiting on his instruction; she's also figuring things out for herself and whatnot.
Right. I guess that's true. Got that intrinsic motivation stuff coming in.
Yeah.
I dig that. It's good. So then we get a special training camp, the summer special training, and we get Mike's coach comes back as a guest coach and is like, "Hey, I need to get as enthusiastic as Tsukasa." And Hitomi's like, "Hey, listen, you can't be like Tsukasa all the time because that dude has not a lot of self-confidence in himself." And so you get a couple, you get some more coach drama in this one. You get the coaches feeling inadequate with each other, feeling like they're not doing the best for their skaters. And I dig that. I think that is pretty good. But you also get where Tsukasa and Ryo meet each other and talk privately. Ryu's like, yeah, I don't have any training goals. I'm done. I think this is where I'm topping out. I'm 12 years old and I'm as good as I'm going to get. And Tsukasa's like, well, that shouldn't be how you think. And Ryo's like, yeah, well, how far did you get in your badges? And Tsukasa reveals that he just passed the prelim level badge. He's like, I have not gotten further than prelim. And Ryu's like, so you're a fake. And one of my favorite parts of this is Ryu's like, I'm gonna tell Inori that you're only prelim, and she's gonna be like mad that she's better than you. And Tsukasa's like, oh, Inori already knows. Like, she doesn't care. And I'm like, damn, fucking get him. I love that part. And we get to watch them talk a little bit. Inori gets her combo in the practice ice, and then Tsukasa finds out that Ryu is also working to be as good as the resident dickbag Jun Yotaka. And Ryu hates Jun Yotaka, and Tsukasa is like, hey, we have that in common. But yeah, it's pretty good. We also learned that Hikaru and Ryo was better than Hikaru, and Hikaru surpassed him too. So that's sad.
This whole drama about, what can our coaches do, and then therefore what can they do for us? That's another one of those things where any teachers watching or coaches watching, I think, will feel that. The old truism of like those who can't do teach, like that stings. But I know lots and lots of teachers who do an excellent job but haven't devoted themselves to the craft, because it sometimes as sort of an objection to how the craft or the industry works. Like I certainly followed that path. I was not interested in going out somewhere far away and getting exploited, and I don't even know if I would have had the skills to get there anyways, right? I'll never know that. But the fact is that I found that I could put my efforts into helping people go farther than I ever could. There's what Ryo is sort of interrogating is this question of like, can I only ever be what I'm directly taught? And of course he would think that way because this whole time he's been sort of, trapped in this mentor relationship with his own father, right? So he's entangled this idea of learning and inheritance as the same thing, right? That you can only sort of get what's given to you. And I think it's also why he sort of struggles with working with Tsukasa, because he's like, hey kid, what do you want to learn next? Like what do you want to accomplish? And granted, like the other teachers at the camp too, everyone's being asked the same question, what do you want? And Ryo hasn't had that really, either he hasn't had that asked of him or he hasn't ever seriously tried to answer it. Potentially because, it scares him to think about that at some point he has to become responsible for his own work and his own actions. If he's not going to be following in his father's footsteps necessarily, then the logical next question that follows after that is, what are you going to do? I think it's yet again, like they're using the characters and their stories and their backgrounds to sort of raise these really interesting questions all throughout the series. And I like that even though Inori, very much trusts in Tsukasa. She still has that sort of slumber party style conversation with Mike underneath their blankets, and it's like, hey, like, do you think that I need a better coach? And she's talking to herself. She's asking herself that. I like that they're still a shakeable part of these characters, right?
Right.
And Tsukasa's thinking the same thing. Am I good enough for the kids I'm teaching? Yeah, it's excellent all around.
Solid. So we get the final couple moments of the season, and Ryu's like, I don't know what to do, and Tsukasa's like, hey, let me show you what I would do in this case. And Tsukasa performs Ryo's program, even though he's only prelim, and it's also one of everyone's favorite moments, and it's Inori watching Tsukasa go out on the ice, and she looks over to Ryo all smug, and she goes, hey, watch this, that's my coach. And it's so fucking cute.
Yeah.
And we get a really beautifully animated moment of Tsukasa performing Ryo's performance by himself. And Ryu's like, I can't believe that your skating is almost as good as Jun's. And he's like, yeah, I skate differently, right? Like, my talent isn't in the same way that he is, but like, I'm not as good at spins and stuff, but I'm a good skater. And Hitomi even is like, yeah, that's why I chose him as my partner, because of how good he was at skating and how good he was at being at his confidence and his sense of everything. And I'm like, damn, fucking sick. And so Ryo's like, fine, we can be a coach. And so we get some ballet classes from another one of the bros, which is Kohaku Shirone, and he's like, hey, I do ballet. Let me show you kids some ballet shit. And so Inori has a hard time, but, it helps her out. And so we get a little bit of the skating. We see the level 8 training badge with Inori, and she meets Hikaru again for the first time, I think, in a year at this point. And Hikaru's like, oh, what are you training here for? And Inori's like, I'm here for my 6th badge, and I'm going to compete against you in nationals. And Hikaru is so fucking happy for it. Mm-hmm. It's such a joyous moment. Even though Inori's trying to be like kind of dramatic about it, she's like, I'm going to compete against you. And Hikaru's like, hell yeah, let's go. I'm so happy for you. So we get to watch the test, and Inori does like a little reflection as she skates. And we also get Ryo has the test, and we actually do get to see a little bit of a panic attack with Inori as they're like starting to talk about who's gonna get it. And we've seen some signs of panic attack stuff with Inori before, but usually, Tsukasa's there to help, but in this part she's not. So we get to see a little bit of her dilemmas that she fights with in her own mind. But they both pass the level 6, and they're like, hell yeah, we're gonna move on, and we're both gonna try and get these gold medals. And that is the end of Medalist Season 1.
Yeah. Some highlights that I had from these ending bits. I really like that there's an excellent part where Ryo finally turns in his goals on his sheet for the camp, and Tsukasa, first of all, he bows very deeply to hand it over. so really like heavily basically apologizing for his behavior before all that. And after he gives it to Tsukasa, Tsukasa says, hey, you should, lift your head up, kind of proudly. And then as Ryo starts doing that, he's like, actually, don't, keep your head down. Because he's like sobbing. He doesn't want him to see it. He's like, hold on, wait. Not yet.
It's so good.
Yeah. Also, gee whiz, kind of interesting that after a whole year apart, Hikaru is just as jazzed to see Inori, and is maybe even more so excited to potentially be seeing her on the rink. Wonder if this is I don't know what they call Yuri of absence. Theorizing. Wondering.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be here with my thoughts. Thank you.
I also like that Tsukasa there's a part where Ryo sees Tsukasa and he's like, holy shit, how do you skate? You're fucking jacked. Yeah. And honestly, like, I love that Tsukasa is like a pretty masculine guy, but they never make fun of him for like crying or feeling like happy. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes they'll put it in like a funny scenario where he's crying and shouting how joyous he is, and so is Inori. But it's not, you're not laughing that he's crying, you're laughing because they're doing something silly. And that's really sweet.
Yeah. I have some more
good masculinity there.
I have more thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But we can get to that. So,
all right. Well, I mean, we might as well get to them now. I mean, we're done with the synopsis. We're done talking about episodes and what we liked about them.
Let me ask you some kind of broad questions about the show. So, when it comes to the characters, what do you think of the performances? Like in like terms of like the voice actors.
Oh, they were fantastic. I let's see. Teiko Utsuka is we watched the Japanese version, by the way. He is our coach. He's in a couple things. He's in, what is this show? He's in a couple things where his characters are really pop. Oh, he's in the Apothecary Diaries. He's Jinchi at Apothecary Diaries, which is people are loving that shit. He's in Beastars as a side character, or not a side character, but as a Kolat. But beside, he's the main character of Oshinoko. So he's been in a lot recently, and he gets some pretty good spots. So this is not his biggest role yet, but I think he does a great job at it. I think he does a really good job at being like emotional and silly, but also being able to like really kick it in and really like get into that, like, hey, this is a little bit more serious.
Yeah. These are character performances. It'd be hard to imagine anyone else, doing them, I think.
Yeah. And then Inori is voiced by Natsumi Haruse, who basically has done Inori, and she's one of the Idolmaster Cinderella girls.
Mm-hmm. I like that Inori's voice is sort of on the more brusque side. Like, obviously it's an adult, doing a child's voice. But it's, to me, it doesn't sound like sort of your typical, like, anime young girl, compare like how Inori sounds to Mike, when they're talking to each other. I think that helps to sort of exaggerate or at least punctuate that, like, she's older than her contemporaries and her colleagues, so yeah. Any other thoughts on characters that you want to mention before we move on from there?
I mean, not that I really I've said it before, I like that all the coaches are different enough, but no one has ever been like, you're a bad coach.
Yeah.
Everyone is able to do their own coaching styles. I like that Hikaru isn't mad that like Inori's doing better. In fact, she seems to be incredibly happy. I like that we have I like Inori's family. I like Inori's sister. That's something we don't really get to talk too much about. I forgot to mention. Inori's sister is like super like jazzed that her sister's doing it. Like really supportive. I like that she's goofy with her little sister. I like their relationship. I think it's cute. I think Inori's mom is a really realistic portrayal of like a parent who really does love their kid, but is worried about them in a way that isn't exactly the most positive way. I think she's really realistic, and I dig that. I really like. We didn't talk about the guy that let Inori in to the ice skating rink because he's not super important, but he does show up to Inori's first tournament, and he cries when she wins, and I think that's really sweet. But everyone else, big fan. Hitomi is fun. The person that hires Tsukasa.
She's such a good wingman. Or
yeah.
Woman.
Yeah.
She's like, it's like, hey, you should take this job. You should teach this kid. Yeah.
I do like in the beginning. She's like, hey, I know you really want to teach this kid, but you can't let the parents know that you like really want to teach her. You gotta be a little less obvious about it. And he's so bad at it. He's like, we need to get this girl's perfect. No one can do. She can do no wrong.
Shouting at the top of his lungs.
Yeah. But yeah, good characters, good story.
And it's also worth mentioning with Yudai and Emma that like we do have characters with darker skin tones, potentially from different geographic backgrounds. I feel like I'm doing a lot of watching of older anime, and I'm noticing how it almost seems more frequent back then to just have like a wider range of skin tones for characters. I don't know if there was something that happened sort of in the lurch from hand painting to digital, where it just kind of became easier to just kind of pick one skin tone and then that's what everyone has, or if it's just completely based on what shows I've been watching, but yeah, I think I've once again come back with an appreciation for the fact that like, hey, look, this cast is not all the same kind of light skin standard. Diversify things a little bit, Yeah. What do you think about the aesthetics, especially considering that you did read some of the manga, and a lot of times people feel really the manga is sort of the root of the art style and what it should continue to look like when it gets adapted.
I think they did a good job trying to translate it. The manga is very, very stylized in like a lot of ways that like you can't really translate into animation too well. There's just a lot more dynamic like poses, but you can't do dynamic poses in anime unless you're doing like a still frame, and at that point it's not the same, So like, you look at manga, there's a lot more like softer lines. The cloth physics look better, but once again, you're just drawing a single picture, right? I don't think the anime did a bad job, but the manga style is really good, and it's kind of hard to replicate that. But they worked with what they could, and they did a great job with it.
I think that the mangaka is really good at making something look intense, whether it's someone's expression or a certain pose, as you'd mentioned. Like, you just get this like.
I sent you a really good picture.
Like there's
of one of the
There's something you feel strongly with it.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the implementation of 3D?
I actually think they did a really good job. I know that they mocapped the skating, which is I think that's the way to go. Because figure skating is already such like a graceful and kind of hard to capture movement, and I think being able to be like, hey, watch this, and having like the movement was really good. I do think that it is a little weird because there were some parts that weren't 3D, that are 3D at other times, and it's mostly like really important. Like, you know, we'll see Inori do her performance for like the level 1 badge test, and that wasn't 3D, or we'll see Rio do his level 6 one, and that wasn't 3D. And I think that kind of is like frustrating, not because I don't like the 3D, but I would much rather it be consistent than not, you know?
Yeah, totally agree. I feel like the 3D was never like insufficient, but there were times where I was looking at it, I'm like, I think this would have maybe matched the intensity of the manga better, or could have had the intended effect better if they got to redraw this one in 2D. I imagine it's mostly a practical problem that, you know, they couldn't do everything in 2D after mocap and everything, but that's modern anime. You know, gotta work within your limits. I also do think that when it comes to like pulling things into slow motion and picking which of those are going to be in slow motion versus just kind of letting a whole performance run out in real time, I think they made good choices on those. There's sort of a perceptual difference where you feel like you're resonating with the dancer, or you feel like you're someone in the audience watching the performance, you know? Depending on, like, is the camera following them as they're skating around, you know, or are we in on a close shot, or are we, you know, kind of far away? If they're slowing things down, then you feel kind of like you're doing the motion with them. Whereas, like, if you get to see it all play out in real time, then you feel like you're spectating. I think they made good choices on that and varied it up in such a way that it, you know, it remains interesting all throughout. Bringing all three of these things together, where like the 3D works and they know what to emphasize. You know, I really think you were right when you said that when Hikaru like turns around and locks eyes with Inori in the opening, I feel like that shows like, okay, they've got it. You know, they know what they're doing. The way that shot reads, where like it's almost like Hikaru is like looking into Inori, right? Like, and everything, there's just like it's a captured moment, you know. I think that impressed me. Yeah. Not everything can meet that sort of, you know, attention, and not everything should, because otherwise it would be overwhelming to constantly just get, you know, sort of overhyping everything. But yeah, I feel like it would be hard to accomplish that sort of that read of that interaction without the visuals. You know, just having that explained to someone, you know, is totally different than seeing it play out in motion. What do you think of the opening and ending?
The opening and the ending are great. The opening is fucking hype. I've included that song in my running playlist now, just because like the fucking beat and the beginning for it, it's fucking great.
Yeah, I think the little sort of digital scratches to when they're showing kind of like when Inori and Tsukasa are kind of in bad places is a little goofy. But overall, it's great. You know, like it's hitting what it needs to, hyping you up for the show.
Yeah, the ending's cute. I like that we get to see. We get to see
Inori and her worm.
Yeah,
it's very charming.
I just like that they were like, hey, Inori has hyperfixation on earthworms. And we're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. I had mentioned before we can talk a little bit more about education. Would you like to? Because I have something I'd like to bring up.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So when we talk about the study of education, we call that pedagogy. And that comes from the root of, pedagogue, which is like back in Greek times, you'd have someone, I think it was like a family's like slave who would walk a child to where they're going to be schooled to learn or whatever. And so the pedagogue is literally walking them to their education, right? And so pedagogy is sort of about like how do we get someone to their learning? How do we teach someone? And so it puts things a lot into sort of the perspective of like instruction and instructors. But there are also other agogis in education. One which I've somewhat recently sort of been introduced to from a research advisor of mine is hudagogy, which also is sort of being pulled from a Greek root. There's also andragogy. I'm not going to talk about that, but it's kind of somewhere in the middle of these two. But hudagogy is coming from the Greek root for self. And so it's a lot about self-determined learning, lifelong learning, stuff like that is where you'll kind of be seeing it discussed. As best I can find, it's originated by Chris Kenyon and Stuart Hayes. And basically they're like, this needs to be kind of its own thing, right? They've also worked with action research and complexity theory, and it's sort of, they have their reasons for why this sort of deserves to be described differently than pedagogy, which I'm not going to get into here, but they did outline essentially like some ways like how hudagogical thinking sort of gets applied to designing these learning situations or things like that. And so I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through a little lightning round of how that happens in this show. Like when Grant is talking about like, when Inori is like, learning things for herself, or, they're, the instructors let their kiddos sort of be their own autonomous learners. I think they actually did manage to do that. So one thing that's pointed out, kind of like top level thing, is recognizing the need for a living curriculum and letting learners drive it. I think we see that quite a bit whenever the students are sort of injecting like, hey, I want to speed up and learn this, or, I want to try this instead, or, that kind of thing. It's, self-directed. In particular, when they introduce Shirone for the ballet guest teaching, he realizes that a bunch of the kids are not really into the ballet part, and so with Tsukasa's help, they sort of pivot to focus on posture instead, so it's more relevant to the ice skating and ice dancing part of this. So the curriculum's not something set in stone. There's recognizing that acquiring knowledge and skills require different approaches than learning. Makes me think of how Nachin has Inori like try a jump, and she realizes how far off she's curved, and so they get to talk about centrifugal forces. So it's like, it's one thing to physically kind of feel that how to jump, but then there's sort of a knowledge element of like, why is it that I keep steering off course? Sometimes these things need to be taught in different ways or learned in different ways, more accurately. There's also Ryo is a good example of this, in that he kind of knows what's expected of him, but just brute force trying to learn it on his own is not really working, right? Like that that heritage that he wants to carry through his like talent, is not really happening, and that skill building has to happen differently. Even if ideally he's seen it from someone like Hikaru, he knows what he's supposed to be doing, but he can't get there.
Right.
The learner identifies learning activities. When Inori and Ryo decide, like, we want to land triple double combos and assert that's happening. Involvement of the learner in designing assessments, self-diagnosis, and application in real-world concepts. I think that is a lot of words, but I think it also happens. Like, regarding self-diagnosis, Ryo has to interrogate what it means to be a good coach in order for him to be an effective student. The fact that he has to wonder, like, can I even be learning this from my dad? Should I be? Does it matter that I'm trying to be him? Should I try not to be him? What's my career goal? Collaborative learning. There's a lot of that here, especially when the kids are sort of mixing together and comparing each other. Like, hey, I'm going to try to do this, and oh, you haven't gotten there yet, I'm already at this level, and that sort of thing. And then, of course, like the teachers interacting with each other to sort of get second opinions on things. And lastly, coaching for individual learning needs and application. A lot of this personalized learning stuff that I think we see being paid attention to compared to like Inori's public school experience, for example, where like she as a student who's sort of distracted from things. I mean, heck, there's the part where she leaves her skates on the train, right? Like, that's sort of signaling her, I don't know if you would say maybe, ADHD or something like that, but clearly, she's insecure about kind of being up to the task on keeping herself organized and doing stuff and whatnot. But with Tsukasa, she has that person who she can confide in, and so they work on grounding her anxiety and teaching in a way that really benefits her. Applying a lot of praise because she's kind of been going without that for so long, and so on and so forth. You mentioned too Tsukasa dancing Ryo's routine, same kind of thing, right? Like, I'm going to do this for you right now. You deserve this kind of special attention to help make this breakthrough. So just to say that I do think this, the writing it's worth its salt when it's sort of approaching education here in a sort of transformative and maybe kind of transgressive sort of way. Kudos, I guess. Yay.
No, I think that's pretty good. Good understanding. Yeah. You know more about educational theory than I do. I
wouldn't say that.
I just do.
I would say that I've read a paper that told me some things last night. Like
I mean, like, the way I look at it, like when I see Tsukasa interacting with Inori, I teach kids almost every day, and being able to identify those learning behaviors and understanding like the motivation and how important that is to nurture. I think it does a really good job at not making Tsukasa too underbearing. Like, the fact that Tsukasa still has agency in the way he coaches Inori without taking away Inori's agency is just such a good way to show their relationship and show a good teaching style. Because it doesn't play into the tropes that people have been established from media, and also a lot of times to their own educational experience. And I love how much work they went in to make them feel so good for each other as a coach and an athlete.
Totally. Now something before we get into hypotheticals and end this off, something I'm not so sure we're on the same page with. What's your queer reading on this show / manga?
So I don't think Tsukasa's gay. I don't know why. I just don't think he is. I think I think he's one of those soft boy himbo like wife guys, but he just hasn't gotten there yet. You know, he can be a wife guy and be gay, I suppose, but I just didn't get that reading from him. I don't exactly know if any of our skaters have even really thought about it or experienced it. I don't get any like romantic readings in this show like I have in the past in other shows. But I just think like the way I look at it, because the big question is Tsukasa, right?
How big?
I think he's big. He's 6'1". He's a tall man. I think Tsukasa is a stay-at-home dad who wants to marry a really, really successful woman. I just feel like he's a wife guy. That's just me.
All right. We'll agree to disagree, my friend.
I know. I think you think he wants to. You think he wants to bone the one guy.
I think not necessarily. I think that it's telling that Tsukasa's path in life was, sort of determined by chasing after June, right? And then, taking him on sort of a non-traditional path in a masculine sense, right? I think, like, there's certain things about how he's characterized that it's doing some interesting pushing on sort of normative masculine patriarchal heterosexual sort of things. Like, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's reaching to say that I would normally think of like ice dancing as more of a feminine sport. So already there's sort of he's finding a link into that, right? By seeing, a man and looking up to him in that, perspective. Partly because I don't think that he and Hitomi have a romantic sort of rapport. I know it's like literally one other woman, so it's like that can't be generalized. But like I don't know. There's a certain energy with them that the fact that she kind of like shops him around in a way gives me that the vibe of like that he maybe is gay and I don't know if he knows it yet, but maybe she knows better than he does. I don't know. It very much is a feel. I guess that's why they call it gaydar and not a like homosexual assessment. I don't know. Look, I'll say this, because really this is not a romantic show at all. Romance is not really a part of it whatsoever. And I get that in many ways Tsukasa is cast into a very kind of standard masculine and patriarchal role. For God's sakes, he's a like surrogate father figure for Inori who does not have a present father in the show. But I do think that there's things about him that are at least pushing back on those normative elements, right? The way that he dances and how the attention is on his extremities rather than sort of his core strength and power, despite the fact that we know he's shredded, right? Like he has this sort of typical masculine macho body type that's sort of built up. But the way that he uses that body is non-traditional then, and so I think that there's lots of things in the show that sort of do that, right? where it's mostly falling into sort of, normative presentations and expressions, but there are things that are sort of creating tension or pushing some resistance against those things, or maybe transgressing it. And it's not just because it's a sports show and everyone's kind of lumped together by gender, and of course then that just means Fujoshis get to go wild because the characters have screen time together. God bless them. I know what happens in the Haikyuu fandom, and you're right for doing that. I don't want to say just because they say Ryo, feels more comfortable when there's another boy skater around that means he's gay. But I think there's more than that. I'll try to make this quick so I don't belabor it more than we have to here, but I do think there's ways that they're pushing on gender roles that are kind of interesting. Obviously, Inori's friendship with Mike is pretty traditionally feminine. They're like, oh, let's check out our cute outfits, and have fun with that and whatever. But the way that she takes her own agency towards skating so seriously, that makes it sound sexist. I don't want to say that women don't have agency. Oftentimes in media, though, they are depicted that way, right? Where I could see this being written in another way, where it constantly comes back around to, what does the coach want me to do? I feel like there's stuff we've watched that even kind of falls into that pattern. Say Symphogear, or Decadence, where some the female characters are strong and empowered, but they do kind of rely quite a bit on what orders they're being given, and that it's about how they conduct it that ends up mattering. I like that Inori gets to sort of carve her own path, right, and that Tsukasa's making lots of room for it. I think that Inori, even just getting the chance to be weird and dig worms out of the ground, and that doesn't bother her, compare how Inori acts to other 11-year-old girls in media, right? She's not talking about beauty standards or raising children or dating boys, right? She's a pretty far cry from that. And I know that sounds like a really low bar, but as someone who's watched a lot of Precure, it's out there, right? I do like that they're, these characters are not just one note per their assigned gender, right? With Ryo, my evidence would point towards that when he's putting on the tough guy act, that we have to sort of think about his character in the inverse then. When he's pushing back on something, what is he not saying? He resists kind of his typical father figures, and that's why Tsukasa starts working for him, is because he's not treating him like a father, right? Tsukasa's sort of treating them like equals.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally, he, much like the other boys he might skate with, he's finding an adult that he can confide in. The way that he jabs Tsukasa about him being shredded, I could read that two different ways. Either either Ryo has sort of a different idea of what the ideal masculine form should be, or that he's uncomfortable realizing that that might be something he's attracted to, and so he's punching down his own gay budding attraction. I don't know. I feel like something's happening.
I look at it as this is a kid that has been raised entirely within the culture that is figure skating. And to him, you know, the best athletes are these, you know, toned, skinny guys who can do these incredible maneuvers. And then he sees Tsukasa. And at this point, he's mostly into this idea of, like, if you are not a perfect representation of what needs to happen, you can't do it, right? Like, he doesn't believe he can get any further than he is. He thinks he's at his peak. And then he sees this guy who is nothing like any of the skaters he sees. But he doesn't want to admit that this guy is good. And so I don't look at it as anything more than, hey, you're not the skater type, and I can't believe that you think you are. I'm not trying to say that you can't read Ryo as a kid who's coming to terms with being gay. I just don't see it in this show as even like a second thought. And you know me, I'm always looking for that shit. But I just to me it's the toxic culture of the boxes that are placed on people within the skating
right.
community.
Well, I think that's what I'm getting at, sort of, is that in confronting that and sort of, you know, going face to face with like the friction there, that is Ryo sort of having to push out of normativity, right? Even if it's not explicitly like, oh, this kid's gonna grow up gay, I do think then queerness is still an applicable label, right? It's, you know, a bunch of people who are sort of who are being told that the normal circumstances would exclude them from their dreams and their goals and their livelihoods, right? And that they don't care. They're going to do what they want to do anyways. I think that has like a queer undertone to it. Yeah, I'm gonna try not to go much further with this, but I will just say that the way that Hikaru has like in her casual wear this really frilly outfit, and it completely does not match her performance uniform, or like the way her hair is just kind of fucking doing whatever it wants. It very much reads to me as like, oh, someone picked out this outfit for her. You know, it's not really what she would normally wear. When you get to see her when she's skating with Inori, that's her like getting to do what she really wants to do, right? You know, when Jun sort of draws a line with Ryo and tries to explain like, you don't understand Hikaru, I feel like that is delineating like this is her space where she gets to be the person she wants to be. And so I think that, you know, I don't know if the outfit thing has anything to do with it, but I read it like that. The way that she's engrossed with Inori, I personally hope that goes somewhere. But either way, I at least enjoy that this show is taking a lot of like heavily normative aspects of, you know, kind of sports story trajectories, and is at least sort of, you know, I keep saying it, but like it's contesting those things, maybe even completely passively, just by writing good characters, you know. No, but I appreciate that. Are you ready for some hypotheticals?
Yeah.
All right. Which of the student characters would fit in best if transferred to your classroom?
I think Inori would. I already have a little girl that's been digging up worms in the playground, and she brings them to people.
That's awesome.
And she's like, I found a worm, and I'm like, put it back. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because it doesn't want to be out of the ground. And if she had another girl to dig worms with, she would be fucking hype. It's actually really funny because she loves playing with the boys. And she still thinks boys are gross, but like it's because they don't stop doing a joke. So like if someone burps once, it's funny. If someone burps 3 times, to her now it's gross. So I think having a girl like Inori who's like, hey, we can do dirty, gross things and dig for worms, but like we know we have to wash our hands afterwards. And she's like, oh, for sure. And then I think that she would fit in so fucking well. So fucking well. Rio on it, he's too mean. My kids would hate him because he's a jerk. They'd be like, I don't like that. He's a kind of an asshole. I'd be like,
Rio would show up to your school because he's already not fit in with several other schools. Which sadly happens.
But yeah, Inori for sure.
Absolutely.
Who do you think would be best taking one of your college courses?
I've had students kind of like Hikaru, where they're so enthused by the work, like we call them rock star types. Where they come in and they just like all they want to do is work on their craft, and they're always showing people, and it's never to knock them down, but it can feel intimidating to a lot of people. But really, what they're doing is like, hey, let's make cool art together. Let's indulge in this. Potentially a one-track mind, but with the complete concentration to enjoy this thing to the fullest. I also have had like plenty of high anxiety students. I think it's pretty common working with people starting college that they're coming in getting overwhelmed with having to do things on their own, and then also being torn in a lot of different directions, feeling like they might have come out of high school very successful, but now they're sort of being challenged in unique ways, that it's easy to crash fast, and what might have always been anxiety but was sort of obscured as just like a general drive to do well is now being exposed for what it is, and they have to grapple with that. I have had the talks with students of like, yeah, what you're experiencing is well known and can be diagnosed if you feel comfortable going to a counselor or a therapist, and putting a word to it, and they're like, oh my god, it's a thing, so I guess both Inori and Mike kind of have that high anxiety thing, though they definitely react in different ways from it. Okay, one more hypothetical for you. Let's say Tsukasa is your coworker, or someone at least that you interact with on a daily basis, like at a gym or whatever.
Okay.
What would small talk between the two of you be like?
It's actually interesting because like I could be like, hey, how's coaching? And we'd be able to like swap weird kid stories. But like I don't know what else he does besides skate. Like I'd be like, did you watch Star Wars? And he goes, what's Star Wars? So I'm like, oh, it's a sci-fi show. And he goes, do they skate in it? And he goes, huh?
You see like a Mickey Mouse sticker on someone's bag, and he's like, oh, that's cute. You're like, yeah, Mickey Mouse. He's like, who? You're like, oh.
He's like,
oh, okay.
Oh, he likes to read, and he likes point-based sweepstakes. I looked it up.
Oh, we've got to get that guy some hobbies.
His favorite foods are donuts and broccoli.
At the same time, right?
That was on the Medalist official Facebook. Oh, fan book. Sorry. Yeah, apparently Tsukasa does not like leftover food. So.
All right.
So, I'm trying to see what else he's a Virgo. That's good.
Is it? I don't know anything about astrology.
I don't know anything about astrology either.
If you're in the audience and you know lots about astrology and you're listening to this video right now, don't tell us about it.
What?
Sorry.
Yeah. I feel like if he reads, we would be able to talk about books. I feel like I could get some good book talk with him. We could start a reading club.
I'd ask him if he's gay.
He would be like, is gay a type of skating?
I'm not familiar with that skater. What's their full name?
There's gotta be a skater whose last name is gay. Cause
there's plenty of people with gay as the last name.
Yeah.
Go everybody right now. Go to your search browser of choice and type in "gay skater" and see what you can come up with. See, lots of people upset about Skate the Infinity.
Yep. Tyson. Oh wait, no. Fuck off. Tyson Gay is a Olympian, but not a figure skater. But Adam Rippon is the first openly gay Winter Olympic athlete, and that wasn't until 2019.
Wow. Damn.
Damn. All right. You have any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you for listening to us talk about Medalist. If you like what you listen to, feel free to give us a subscribe. Let us know that you're here to listen to us talk about anime. You can follow us on Twitch if you want to listen to us do other things other than talk about anime, like play games. You can follow us on those two things and those two things only, because I haven't made a Blue Sky for this account. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Who's to say? Brantley, do you have a thought about what our next show might be? We're watching a couple right now.
It's hard to say. We've gone from sort of circling the drain on what we're gonna maybe try to finish up or do next, and now there's like somewhere between 5 to 10 interesting shows running this season, and it's overwhelming as fuck. So I don't know what the hell we're gonna do next. You'll just have to subscribe and find out.
Yeah, subscribe and find out, or don't do that, because we are not your dads.
But we are your comrades.